Coming up on this episode of Professional Development.
When you're like, okay, I should be making an Olympic team. I need to make an Olympic team this year. But Canada was doing this thing this year where they wanted you to prove fitness. I remember having a conversation with my coach and I'm just like, I gotta win, right? I don't know if I would have been selected if I was second or third.
I'm Conrad Drover. Join me as I sit down with inspiring professionals from diverse fields to gain valuable insight from their experiences and knowledge to help me grow as both an educator in the classroom and as a person in all areas of my life. This is Professional Development.
All right. Erin Teschuk, nice to see you again.
Yeah, great to see you too.
It just lined up because Christmas break, we usually try to get a workout in and stuff like that, which we did.
Yeah.
Which was good. Yeah. You've been in the sport of track and field for like 15 years now.
Give or take, yeah. About that, which is crazy to think about, but yeah.
It is. And I think you've accomplished everything there is to do in this sport. I guess aside from a podium finish at the Olympics or something like that, right? But the amazing thing is it's you represented, not only Canada, but Winnipeg on, the biggest stage in the world.
Yeah, I mean, unreal experience. It's funny to hear you say accomplish everything because I'm like, well, what?
Yeah.
But, that's the thing about sport. There's always more to accomplish. You always want more. But I've been really, really lucky to be able to kind of compete on some really big stages and obviously trying to rep Winnipeg as best I can.
Yeah, I guess that's the athlete mentality, right? There's always another thing to go. There's always another thing to chase, right? Mm-hmm. I guess since 15 years is a long time, do you just want to break down, who is Erin Teschuk? How are you started in track and field, right from the get-go, and then how you progressed to what you're doing now, and then we can get into what you're doing now and stuff.
Totally. So yeah, I think I must have been around, I think I was 9th grade when I joined Winnipeg Optimist, the track club. And yeah, it was really a decision. I remember I played soccer at the time and loved soccer growing up and everything like that, but definitely noticed I was pretty good at the running part. That's actually basically all I'm good at in this sport.
The classic story. Soccer player goes in the track, right?
Yeah, it's in a game, I'm just okay, I'm really good at chasing after the ball. Once I get the ball, I
don't know. Yeah, that was the same with me in rugby. Yeah, it was the same with me in rugby.
Yeah, 100%. And so could definitely tell from an early age, running was always something I kind of excelled in school track and all of that. And it's funny because I used to figure skate when I was younger as well.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I figure skated, I played soccer. And I remember being at a point in my life where I was I had a school track coach who was you should probably join a track team kind of thing. And my parents were just okay, we don't have time to add another sport in. So you'd have to drop one. And I remember being oh, should I drop figure skating to join track? And thank God I did that because I was not very good at figure skating.
Yeah. I always wonder how many people are just in the wrong sport.
Yeah.
To become an Olympian, they're the stars have to align, right? You have to be in the right sport for whatever your talents or whatever your genetics are. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that doesn't line up with what you're interested in.
Totally.
I bet there's hockey players out there that are pretty good hockey players, but they have a cap on that sport. Mm-hmm. And if they were a middle distance runner, they would have gone way higher, but they didn't want to do that. Right. Yeah, so it's just amazing to think teaching kids is I always look at potential, and I've of course the bias for track because I'm hey, come out, that'll be great.
Yeah.
So cool. So yeah, figure skating, no go. But then Winnipeg Optimist, and I think we're in the same grade. We were in the same grade, right? 2012 graduating.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
So I think we joined. I think I joined grade 9, grade 8, grade 9.
Probably around the same time. I bet. Yeah. But yeah, like I said, did lots of sports. And to your point, that's why in those years, it's so good to explore different things, right? Imagine if I didn't explore this avenue of track, right? But, there's also a million different ways it could have worked out. So I'm definitely not too into the early sports specialization. I think it's so good to sample different things. And although figure skating wasn't for me, it was a great experience. I played some basketball. I played some volleyball. talk about genetics, not there.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, so I joined Winnipeg Optimists. I got into track and really like I took to it right away, like, of course. And I think the main thing that kept me in at that age was just the people in it, right? Like, I think you meet great people and it makes it fun, right? And I'm sure I could look back on my high school experience and say like, oh, I should have trained much harder and stuff. But
Always. Yeah.
I loved it, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that's what kept me in the sport, not because I was the absolute best in high school. I did well. I did well in it and everything. But I think just the fact that I learned to have fun playing sports was the thing that kept me in it. And I had such a good experience in high school, such a great coach, of course, you know, and everything.
Scott Radley, shout out.
Shout out, you know, and that's, you know, for that age, the most important thing. Like, are you having fun with it? Made such good friends through that. And so, yeah, kind of the next thing was for me looking to go away for university. So I ended up going to North Dakota State University. And, you know, even like I said, you know, maybe I could have done a little better in high school. Maybe I could have gone to like a really, really big school and all of that. And I think everything worked out exactly how it's the best it could have for me. North Dakota State was a great fit. It was a D1 school, but small enough that I didn't get lost in the crowd.
Right.
You know, when I went into college, I was good, but I wasn't amazing or anything like that. I don't think anyone pinpointed me and said she's going to the Olympics.
Did you get like any sort of scholarship going to North Dakota State?
I did. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I got scholarship there and it wasn't a full ride. Yeah. It ended up bumping up to a full ride once I did well there. But that was the cool thing about the program is I think they developed me, right? And I think if I would have gone to a really big school, I don't know if I would have been developed in the same way, right? Because you know,
we always hear those horror stories of like people like being these prodigies in high school and then they go somewhere down south to like one of these big universities. And from my perspective, like I'm a U Sports guy, but from hearing about it, it's like a lot of NCAA schools, it's like they have a basket of eggs and they like chuck it at the wall and whatever one doesn't break, like, oh, that's their superstar, right?
Yeah.
But
and then they're like, look at us, we had this great egg.
Exactly,
we made this egg. It's just like, well,
how many bodies are like over there, right? So but that's awesome that you found like the perfect school. And like again, I think a lot of it is like our high school training and just the mentality that was instilled on us. But it's always funny. Like we'll get back to the story. Just North Dakota State. It's interesting to me because the mentality we have here in Canada is that the States is always bigger. It's always like more extravagant. And when you look at it, like North Dakota, like the state has less people than Winnipeg. Like it is like in terms of population density. But then. So I think that was the perfect pick for you, right? As you were saying, but go on with North Dakota State.
It was because I think, you know, it wasn't as glamorous as some of the Big Ten schools or whatever it might be. A little bit smaller. But I had every opportunity I needed to succeed, right? And I think I remember, you know, sometimes you go on school visits in some of the bigger schools and it's like, oh, they have all this nice gear and all these super nice facilities that draws you in and stuff. And I had good facilities there.
You did,
but I had what I needed, right? Yeah. It wasn't like this super glamorous where it's like, we got so much money to spend on athletes and things like that. Yeah. But it gave me everything I need. Because when you think about it, okay, what do you need in a sport? Like for me, I was like, I need a coach I can trust and who knows what they're doing, right? I need teammates that I enjoy being around in a good atmosphere. Yeah. And then like, I need a track, right? Like,
right. Well, you look like across the pond and like in Kenya and Eaton, like they have like dirt tracks, right? Like, so
pretty much,
like the facilities are nice, right? But that just shows us like, at the end of the day, it distills into like the people you're around and the coaching that you have. Like you can get a lot done anywhere, right?
It's about the people. Yeah, the people you're around and yourself, right? Because I think, you know, are you going to be the kind of athlete that looks for everything you don't have? Or are you going to be the kind of athlete that says like, this is what I got and I'm determined to make this work and see what I can do, right? And so you can do that anywhere, right? And you know, I did get lucky because I ended up having just great coaches and everything like that. Yeah. And part of that is luck. You don't always know, right? Because anyone can seem awesome on a visit, and so it is a little bit. But I got reaction, right?
Yeah, there's there's a level of like faith and like a little bit of like risking it for the biscuit sort of thing. But just so like the audience knows that you're not a pole vaulter, what events did you focus on in high school, and how did that progress into college and later on?
Yeah, that's a good point. I should explain that. And so in high school, the 800 was my main focus.
Right, so it was.
Yeah, we love the 800, right?
The 800,
it's a great event. It really is. I did the 1500 as well, even some 400s too, but more, I would say, like speed based, even just in terms of our training, not especially in high school. I didn't do like high volume workouts
that
or
was
weeks or anything.
Definitely purposeful when I look back at it. Right?
Yeah. No, I think that was definitely better for me. And again, like the enjoyment of it, like at that age, I know for me, like I wouldn't have enjoyed doing long tempo runs, like
mile repeats. No,
I wasn't built like that at that age. Now I am, but just doing lots of speed stuff at an early age, developing speed and everything, and then kind of moved up distance as I went. So my first year of university was still kind of 800, 1500, but added a little bit more volume and all of that. And then I started the steeplechase. It was the summer after my first year of university, I believe. I did it for the Canada Summer Games. That was my first time ever steepling. It was a 2K steeple.
What made you do the switch, like from middle distance?
Honestly, it was just like, because I had that whole year. My coach at the time, his name was Ryan. It was summer training, and he was sending me training while I was here in Winnipeg. And I kind of mentioned, I'm like, oh, it's Canada Summer Games. Like, I'd love to try to do something, see if I can qualify. And we were kind of talking, and I was like, well, what event do you think I should do for it? Like, should I try it for the 15? And he was like, why don't you try the steeplechase? And like at that time, I'm like, sure, why not, right? Like, and so I had never even done it before. I jumped into like one of the random Winnipeg races, right? I think I wiped out multiple times in that race. But then I did it again, and it was a little bit better. And I qualified for Canada Summer Games. And then went and got silver at Canada Summer Games that year. Behind Jen Lalonde, Canadian steeplechase legend. But that was kind of when it's like, oh, actually, like I might be kind of good at this, right?
So steeplechase, like my fiance, like she was introduced to the world of track and running from me. And I tried to explain steeplechase to her, and she thought I was bananas. Like, she's like, that's not real. Like, so could you explain what steeplechase is?
It's essentially long distance hurdling. So when you think about a hurdle race, it's like that, but it's usually 3Ks, the standard distance. And so every lap you go over, I don't remember, I want to say 5 barriers and a water pit. And the barriers they're kind of thick. And so it's not like a hurdle race where if you hit them, they knock over. If you hit them, you're going down kind of thing. So they look like the steeples that horses jump, right?
Yeah.
And then the water pit is another barrier, but there's a water pit after where it starts really deep and gets shallower. So the more you clear, the less you land in the water. Yeah. So it is a crazy event, right? Yeah. Like when you say it like that, it's just like
who made that?
Who made that, right? That? Yeah, it's a little bit, it's almost cruel to think about. Like running's hard enough as it is. They're like, let's jump over things, right? Mm-hmm. It takes a special person for sure to like the steeplechase, but
was there any like strategic thinking when you were switching the steeplechase, being like, okay, like maybe the competition's not as deep, or maybe like this is your best like chance to qualify for this or that? I've seen that mentality in some athletes at a lower level, like for Legion Nationals, right? Like, oh, I can sneak in if I go to steeplechase. Or was it just like, no, I think like I'm at sort of like a level where I think not quite plateauing, but my gains are less and less in the 15 and 8. Maybe can I move up and like I have a wider scope of developing in that event? Is that sort of the mentality?
Not necessarily for me. I think it can be, right? Like you said in high school, like it's not the steeplechase is not a common event in high school. Maybe a little bit more now than it used to be, but back when I did it, it was less common. For me, it was really just like I said, my coach was just like, like, let's do something different, or like, I think you would be good at this. And there's certain, I think, traits you see in runners that kind of indicate you might be good at steeplechase. So more kind of like stronger, resilient runners, right? I was always good at cross country with hills and things like that. And even like the pace changes, right? So someone who's like a super rhythmic runner might struggle with the speeding up, slowing down
like the
that you need to get over hurdles and stuff. So I think it was really just my coach kind of saying like, hey, I think you kind of be good at this. Like, let's give it a try kind of thing. So yeah, it just jumped in it and kind of
second place Canada Summer Games.
Yeah, that was, I think, my third time doing the event.
And that was in your first year of university?
Summer after my first year.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah. So then starting second year was when I started doing steeplechase. And for me too, though, like, like you said, like, okay, is it that we don't see a ceiling in other events? That was never really the case, because for me, it's always been important for me when I was doing steeplechase to be able to do well in other events too.
Right.
And I think the best steeplechasers are running really good 5Ks and really good 15s.
Yeah.
So I never wanted to be a one event athlete. Like, I've always loved the 15. And now as I get older, I mean,
you were still like if my memory serves, like we were always like watching you on like flow track and stuff like that when we were like competing during the year, and you were like still crushing good 800s. Like I think you ran a 208. Like, is that your best?
I've run 206 in the
206.
Yeah.
There you go. And that's competitive in itself, right? Like,
that's one of those ones I'm like, I'm going to come back for that maybe one day. But yeah, it has like, I've always wanted to pursue other events as well. And I think the 15 at this point now, I don't even know what my best PB would be, but probably the flat 3K actually.
Yeah.
So I've always wanted to like be pursuing other events as well.
Do you ever look on like the World Athletics and like see like your World Athletics score on all those? And like, cause like when I'm trying to talk to people about track performances, I've always had this thing where it's like, well, how do you know if you're a better 800 runner than Buddy over here is a long jumper? Right? Like, how do you compare the two? And then usually what it comes down to is like those scores. So, like my numbers are significantly lower than yours, but like my 800 is like 926. Right. Yeah. And when I came, like I took 3 years off running, and then I came back and then ran the 1500, a different coach, which was cool because it totally changed my mentality and how I did it, which is something that we could get into later. But and then I ran the 1500, trained for that because I was very anemic in the 1500. Like I just was not good at it. But then I was a little older, a little more mature, a little more conscientious of how I trained and how I ate. And I ended up running, well, like I guess my time was like 153 for the 8, which is like not bad, like especially in like U sports. And then I got my time down to 354 for the 15. And on the World Athletics score, they're both 926.
Oh, right on.
And
okay.
then my 1000, which is an event you guys don't usually race, right? Like not often.
Rarely, yeah.
Is 926 as well. But those were all hit at like 3 different times.
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know if an athlete can do all those at the same time, right? You can't be your best at the 800 and your best at the 3K steeple at like the same time. There has to be some like physiological trade-off, right? When you're training, like you have to prioritize certain stuff, or am I wrong on that?
No, yes and no. Like and I think it depends on the athlete as well. Like some athletes I feel like do better. And even something like the 800, right? That's an event where you see some people coming from it from a very aerobic side, and some people almost coming from it like a sprinter, right?
Yeah.
And so
400 hold on.
Yeah, like if you're doing the 400 hold on thing, you're not going to be able to run a good 15 at the same time, right? Like that's not going to add up, right? For someone who is a little bit more aerobic, and like for me, I actually found like, I think like within 1 year was when I PB'd in college. So these aren't all my PBs, but stood a long time. Like my best year, I PB'd in the steeple, the 800, the 1500, the 5K, the 3K, and it's just because I was so much more aerobically developed. I was so much stronger and better in that aspect and like, even for me, like if I trained for the 800, and I did for many years, as you know, when I was training for the 800, that was one thing. As soon as I moved up distance, I got better at the 800. And so for me, I actually find for something like the 800, I do much better if I'm training more 1500, 5K based and hop down, but I'm just more strength based in that aspect. So I do think it depends a bit on the person, but I've actually found it translates pretty well for me, but I think that's more personal is going to be different.
Yeah. And like also like, especially like transitioning to college, like your overall fitness is just getting better, right?
Exactly.
Like, so like, I don't know if like, let's say you were at your like Olympic level for the for the 3K steeple, or whatever your best event is on paper, like you were at the absolute top of that. Then like trying to get to like a 159 at the same time.
Yeah.
Right. But I think, yeah, when you start college, and like it happened for me too a bit. My training was like drastically different. Because my university coach had a very different philosophy than our high school coach.
Yep.
And I had a transition year where I actually trained with my high school coach for the first year of university. And then when I transitioned to my second year, like I started running on my off days. Like that was like the thing. And all of a sudden, like you said, it just like bam, like everything, like things that were really difficult for me in any event were just better, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know, I always like now like I'm training for like road stuff, and I'm always thinking like I can get my half marathon down, but there's no way I can keep the same speed for like, but like I guess the range is different than 800 to 3K compared to like 800 to 22 kilometers or 21 kilometers.
Yeah,
right?
that I think you're kind of going in like pretty different categories. So it's like in one aspect, fitness is fitness, right? And unfortunately, the best way to get better at running is running. So, you know, you gotta run.
Like,
yeah, it's like darn. But yes, I do think, of course, like specializing in something versus, like the 800 versus the half is going to be.
But you just don't want to do it too early, because then you wouldn't figure out like what your event is and like what the one, like you enjoy this, like, so you're great at all the events. Like I think if you were to say yourself, like your best event, is it like 3K steeple or 5K?
3K flat for
3K
sure.
flat.
3K flat is my best.
Is that your most enjoyable race? Like what's your favorite race to run?
Probably the 3K or like the mile.
Okay, so it lines up. The mile's great. Like, well, I've only ran 1 mile.
Yes.
Like, but
and I mean 1500. You know, essentially the same thing. I feel like I kind of like a mile a little better. Something about that extra 100 meters. Like
9 meters.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Did you find that makes like a difference mentally, like when you're running it, or have you just been used to the mile so much now, being in the States?
Yeah, in college you run the mile through indoor, and I think. I mean, I don't think it really makes that much of a difference. I feel like I've always found in the mile, like maybe people take it out a little slower. Maybe that's mental or whatever it might be. But like I find in the or maybe that's just because it's mostly indoor versus outdoor too. But that's always kind of been my experience, like just a teeny bit. But I mean, like 1500 mile 3K are probably my favorite, and the 5K we're warming up to kind of. We'll get there.
We'll
complicated
get there.
Relationship
In the mile or the 15, so either or. I love that race. I love the 1500 because you can gain so much out of it with strategy. What is your like go-to strategy? What are things that you don't want to mess up on it? And what is your mentality on it? Because I have a mentality on it, but I want to sort of hear from like going into a race when you're like, okay, this is my goal. How do I get there? This is what I got to do.
You know what? I'm someone who orients more towards like instinctual racing. I don't like to overplan too much. I find if I do that, it's different. It's different for different people, right? Like I know many people, and you know, have now work with athletes that it's really important for them to be super prepared going into races, right? And for me, I find I run best when I'm focused on competing. And focus on moving up throughout races. So that's always been my best strategy. And so I think like how I approach the 15 is like, okay, you get into a position and then try to make it feel as easy as possible for that first 800 meters. And then we're thinking about competing for the last, was it 1 3/4 lap from there, right? And so for me, I'm thinking about like, that's kind of when the race begins. But I've always done better when I have forward momentum throughout races. And I've always find it's when I get too obsessed about getting out on a certain pace that I tend to not run super well.
Right.
So that's the way I approach it. But yeah, I like to just go into the races and just like keep an open mind and, trust my racing instincts. And I just think I do better when I'm competing and not overthinking.
Like it's a race, not a time trial. Like
Exactly.
you're looking at places, not splits.
Yep.
Right.
And there's a time and a place. Like, I think it's good to be aware of a split, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm aware if I go through 400 and I'm like way too slow, then it's like, okay, we'll move up a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Like, you have a general idea too,
Right.
but I try to not be like obsessive about what that number needs to be when I.
Yeah, and it's the goal of the race, right? Like, oh, I'm trying to qualify, so I need top 2 or something like this here. Like, that's the focus on that race. Or I need a time to get into a next race, or I need to get through these trials or whatever. Like, it depends on the context of the race, I guess.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, it's going to be different if you're even like running a race for place versus I'm really trying to go after a time or whatever it is. But yeah, no matter what, I'm trying to be in a position where I can be like moving up throughout the race.
I guess in my sort of level, because I'm at the stage where it's like, oh, I just want to see how fast I can possibly get. So I'm always thinking of just running my best, right? And then I sort of use the people around me to do my best. The 1500, my lifetime best, because I'm never doing it again. It's just
Never
not
say
enough
never.
time. Yeah, maybe. But like I said, never, like 4 years ago, and then I did it. So, but it was like the Victoria Track Classic. And I got into a race, and my goal was just to run the best I could possibly do that day. Like, I literally, like, whatever you want to call it, like a prayer or a thought or something like that. I was like, just let me do what I'm capable of doing.
Yep.
And my mentality was get to 1200.
Yeah.
Like, get to 1200. That's all I have to do, because the last 300 is going to suck no matter what. Like, it's going to hurt. So I think, and that was at 354. I split through like 204 or something like that. I was like, okay, that's good. Like, I'm good. And then usually what happens when I was like more novice in the 1500 is that's where like the slowdown happens. Like right after 800.
Yeah.
So all I thought about was like, hammer this next lap. Like, just get to the next lap. Like, get through the split. And I think I was like 307 or something like that. And then I completely blacked out. Like, nothing. Like, no times, no play. Like, I just physically threw my chin down.
Yeah.
And tried to run like 300 as fast as possible.
Yeah.
So I always like try to like contrast like sort of like the more amateur aspect about it to like being like elite competitive runner, because I guess that does make a difference when you're at a level where it's like your personal bests are so great and competitive at that. Now it's like, it's literally competing now. It's like because everyone on that field is capable of amazing things. Now it's all about who is the best that day, like how to win it that day. Is that the best way? Like, is that a accurate way of describing it?
I like what you said about like, how can I do the best I can this day? Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's like something I would say to any athlete in any sport or any endeavor outside of sport as well. Right. Like, you show up and you are the best you can be with whatever you're working with on that day, whatever the race is, with however you're feeling, whatever that first split is. Like, can you get the most out of yourself on that day? And, in my work now, I work with athletes in a consulting, sports psychology consulting, right? And I say that to them all the time, right? Like, that's the goal. Like, you could have a day where it's like, you don't hit your time goal, but you leave that race saying like, I got everything out of myself on this day. That's the win, right? And I try to be really adaptable with my race plans in terms of, like I said, I don't, not focusing on very specific times in general, right? Like, of course, like I said, like
you have a ballpark.
Yeah, like I know around what I'm going to come through 800 for a 1500, give or take. I try to be more flexible with that. And when I plan for races, I plan mentally. So I map out, this is what I want to be thinking, feeling, can visualize that, break down the race mentally. Like to me, I'm like, if I can go in really mentally prepared, I'm going to be most likely to be able to get the most out of myself, regardless of how that race goes or regardless of how I'm feeling. Right. And so that's where I put more of my focus.
Okay. Yeah. No. And I like the thing about 100%, like, cause like we always want to give 100%. I've had teachers that like do assemblies and stuff like that. And they go, okay, kids, like remember you give 100%, 100% of the time. And I feel like if you don't have like some context with that, it's really discouraging because people don't feel 100% all the time. No. But I think the way like I tried to frame it, and I think you caught on to that, is like, what's my 100% today? Yeah. Like best case scenario, if I'm like a little sick or like a little sore, or what is like the best case scenario if stars align and I run today. And like, I think that should be the goal, like to anything, like wake up tired for work or whatever. It's like, okay, I may not be like the most extravagant Mr.Drover, like, you know, today, but like, what can I get done in like to the best of my ability today? Yeah.
And I think that's the mentality you want. Cause like if you're going into something saying, hey, I need to have an A+ day every day, what we actually see is that as soon as that A+ day starts slipping away, we're down in C-, right? Like it slips really easily. And so I think people sometimes has this vision of like, oh, if we really always have that 100% attitude, A+ all the time, that's what we need. But you actually see a lot less resilience with that kind of mentality. Whereas the one we're saying, where it's like, hey, how can I do my best with what I got today? It's not going to be an A+ day every time, and it won't be no matter what, but we can maybe have make that day a B day, right? Which is way more consistent than, you know, this like up and down where you see athletes like, oh, it's either a great day or it's like a disaster, right? And I've been guilty of that, you know, plenty of time, right? Where it starts to go downhill and it just goes downhill really quickly. But if you can engage with the mental side of things and with how good can I be today, you're going to be so much more consistent, right? And so maybe it's some A+ days and some B's and then an A+, you know, that's going to be so much better. And then you leave these races or whatever it is you're in, you know, your day at school. Yeah. And you're kind of like, hey, you know, that wasn't perfect, but like there was a lot good in there. Yeah. And like if I keep doing that every time, eventually I'm going to be knocking it out of the park more often. Yeah. Right?
You're sort of lifting the floor a bit, right?
Exactly.
So is that, like, I love the language of like A+ day, B day, stuff like that. Is that just like wisdom from experience, or is that some of the stuff you're doing in school with your PhD and your undergrad and stuff like that? Is that some of the research in sports psychology that's going on right now?
Yeah, very much both, right? Like a lot of this is anecdotal in terms of like my experiences in the sport. Yeah. And like I said, I've been that person who, as soon as that A+ day slips away, we panic, we disengage, whatever it might be. I've been that person. So I've learned this very much firsthand. But then this is also stuff that I'm learning in school as well. And even in my, you know, practice with athletes too, I found like this is something that works really, really well with athletes who, you know, I think a lot of us experience the same problems a lot of the times. But yes, it is also very much backed up by, you know, my research and reading I do in sports psych and all of that. So I like to kind of come from it in all directions.
I like how like sports in general is like a very good analogy for like everyday life. Because I find even with, you know, eating healthy or getting rid of bad habits and stuff like that, a lot of, like, so my mom has quit smoking like a dozen times, right? Yeah. And then as a support person, you know, when she has to go out for like a cigarette or something like that, and then she feels like crummy about it. It's like, well, you're still smoking way less than you have before. Like there is a positive to this, right? Like I know it sucks that you sort of broke that, you know, that pact with yourself about doing that, right? But, you know, now like tomorrow's another day, like you can start up, and like just because you had one cigarette doesn't mean like you have to smoke the whole pack now, right?
The all
like
or nothing,
the all or nothing, right? Or when like, you know, I'm super guilty of this when I like have a tough workout or something like that. And then I'll, all of a sudden my hands when I'm driving, I like just slip into that McDonald's drive through. Right. And it's like,
screw this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'll get a snack wrap or something like that. But there has been times where I'm like, oh, well, I screwed up anyway. I'm going to get large fries, milkshake, whatever. Right.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, like you don't have to beat yourself up just because you're not 100% optimal all the time. Right. And like, I guess, I don't know like how cohesive those examples were to it, but I just find, a lot of people think like if I'm not perfect, then no progress really matters, when in fact, like that's the complete opposite, right? Like it's statistics. It's like the average, man. Like you're looking over time, how your behavior is changing and, your progress over time, not just this one bleep and this outlier in data.
Yeah, it's funny. It's such a common thinking trap, the all or nothing thinking. And I think we do that with so many things, even like, something I see, with athletes, how you prepare or reflect on your competitive events, right? It's like, oh, either this was great or it was a disaster. Like you said, it was either a good workout or this was a disaster. This is the worst day ever. And like, we think in these extremes all the time, right? And, what I try to do myself, again, I don't do this perfectly and try to encourage other people to do as well, is like embrace this, like this gray, messy middle zone of like, hey, you had a tough workout. I bet there was good things in there. And there's probably things you could do better. You had a great race. There's lots in there. That's great. Probably things you can do better in that too, right? Like, let's look at things a little bit more nuanced. And so having that mind shift or mindset shift from labeling things as good, bad, all or nothing to being really curious about the things
information,
we do.
Right?
Yeah, learning. Yeah, exactly. Like in that middle zone, we have like the curiosity, the self-compassion, right? So we're not completely judging ourselves one way or another, good, bad. We're compassionate with ourselves. And this is where we find the learning zone, the getting better, the embracing the nuance.
It's a challenge, right?
Exactly.
But it's not easy. It's not boring, but it's like the flow zone, right? Training in general is frustrating. Learning in general is frustrating, right? Like you are doing something difficult and there is going to be that like ick moment where it's like, but I've tended to make it as like just data. Like, I had this workout where I was doing way longer reps than I normally do. And I'm like, okay, well, there's information here. Like, what am I doing wrong here? Am I like, should I have slowed down a bit? Or is this part of my fitness right now? That is what we got to work on. And like some workouts, like I've been told through my coaches and the athletes that I coach, is like the bad workouts aren't necessarily bad, but they're informative. So maybe you didn't get the most fitness you ever got from them, right? Maybe it wasn't that workout that made you from here to here, but now I have data for the next session that I can like focus on, right?
Yeah.
Like bringing back to like, it's either the best day ever or the worst day ever. Scott Radley actually like shifted that persona, like that mindset to me perfectly. Because back in high school, I was trying to break 2 minutes all the time. And I hit I broke it once. I was like 1:59.97. I was like, oof. And then like for the next like 3 months, I was like 2 minutes, 0.1, 2 minutes, 0.2 or whatever. And he framed it really well to me. Like he was like, you still ran 99% point something
of your best
day. Like that is crazy. Like you're like, no matter what, like you are less than 1% off of your absolute best. And he's like, in anything in life, you would look at that and be like, that's pretty much 100%.
Totally.
Right? It just track is just so number driven, right? That like people get caught in that.
It's so easy to make those comparisons. And I say this all the time because you don't have that as much in other sports, right? No. Like I don't think a soccer player after every game was like, was that the best game I've ever done in my entire career? Otherwise it's a failure.
Yeah.
Right? Like that almost seems ridiculous. Like you're not going to have your best game ever, every single time you play. Right. Or even like as a teacher, right? Like, do you expect yourself to have like your greatest teaching day every single time you go to work? Like Probably not. But in track, it's like, oh, you're 0.2 seconds off your best. It's like, that's a failure.
Yeah.
Like it's a crazy way to think. But again, it's, athletes are driven, they want to do well. And it just is an objective sport. But I also like what you said of like that frustration piece of it is the learning piece. And I'm sure you see that in school, right? When kids are learning long division for the first time or whatever it might be, like it's really frustrating. Like I can imagine that feeling. Like I haven't done math in so long, but I can imagine like sitting at home trying to do my math homework and you're like, feel like you're overheating. And I'm like, this is so frustrating because I can't get it. But that's how you learn things and that's how you get better, right? And it's the same thing. Like if you're going to improve at a sport, you're going to have those days where it's really frustrating. And so I think the mindset shift here isn't necessarily how do I not ever get frustrated? It's how do I see that frustration as growth, not a bad thing.
Yeah. How do you navigate it? And I think that's like where the coaching and the teaching, like the teacher and the coach's job is to sort of like guide you through that desert, right? Like you're kind of like, when I find it, it's like, I'm so stuck. Like I can't get any faster. I've plateaued, or there's no way I can handle this worksheet. I'm so confused.
Yeah.
It's the coach's job or the teacher's job to sort of like navigate, hey, like nudge you in this direction. Let's try this, or like reset your mindset on that.
Yep.
And I think that's where like a lot of the magic of like, you like the coach that you have, you had in NDSU, like, and the coach we had in high school. I think a lot of our success is based on that skill set of sort of navigating. And as you're become a more mature athlete and, a lifelong learner, you sort of understand that in yourself. And that's sort of that resilience that you were talking about, trying to instill that, But so NDSU, well, right off your first year, you got second at Canada Summer Games. Amazing. And then you sort of now you ticked up a bit in the distance, like to the 3K, but you're still hanging around the middle distance stuff, which is awesome. So I think when after your first year of NDSU, I think that's when you really started like finding your stride. I don't want to say blow up because like that has different connotations.
It was my third year. Well, I mean, it was gradual improvement through my first 2 years for sure. Like adjusting to the new training more, all of that. It was my third year. So my second year, I started doing the steeple, and I did well. I had success. I qualified for regionals, NCAA West regionals that year. But like towards the end of that pack kind of thing, like not even like a slim dream of making NCAAs at that point in my career. Truly, I was just happy to be at regionals. And so, and I, to put the time in perspective, and not everyone will understand times and stuff, but like I ran, I think 10:23 in the steeplechase my second year of university. And then it was my third year of university. I ran 9:40 in the steeplechase.
Wow, that's a huge.
So, and I think it was 9:43, and then I qualified for Worlds and ran 9:40 at Worlds. But it was a massive shift. Like I went from essentially, like I said, like, I did well in my conference, like just squeezed into regionals, to then all of a sudden, going into indoor season my third year. I remember sitting down with my coach and being like, yeah, like our goal is to make, be All-American in all these events, right? And then going into outdoor where it's like, my goal is to win NCAAs, right? Like it was a day and night, really. I think in the mile, I went from running like 4:51 to 4:32 that year. It was like a little bit of a whirlwind, in a great way, but also overwhelming when I think back on it. Just like, it kind of came out of nowhere.
You said 10:23 to 9:40.
Yeah. In 1 year. Yeah.
Okay. So like you're talking about how you like gradually improved, and then like you do have those like breakout races, like it just, cause you had no preliminary PB before that was faster than 10:23.
Yeah.
Right. Was it that race? Was it the mentality? Was it like, oh, like you had this fitness, you just didn't use it yet? Like,
So
How do you break that down?
I got a new coach. So my current coach, Andrew Carlson, who still coaches me now, started coaching me at the beginning of my third year, like that summer going into my third year of university.
Yeah.
And we kind of joke about it now because I don't think he realized what a big jump in training it was for me. And he's like, in hindsight, that was probably too much of a jump. But I handled it really well, right? So added a lot more mileage, a lot more aerobic work. And really, like, the reason I still work with Andrew is because his training just clicks really well with me. And so I do think it was largely due to that, having him as a coach, where all of a sudden, because it was gradual kind of improvements for my first 2 years, and then trained that summer under Andrew, came in, and that was when I made my first NCAA champs, was in cross country that year.
Right.
So I qualified as an individual. That was my first time qualifying for NCAAs, obviously.
Yeah.
And then going into indoor season, that's when all of a sudden it was this shift of like, oh, this is like something I could be really good at, right?
Yeah.
And so that's when we sat down, we made those goals of like, okay, All-American in the mile and the 3K. I was able to achieve that indoor season. And then going into outdoor season, I had these massive jumps during indoor season. Running 4:32 in the mile. I think I was 9:02 in the 3K at that time. And so going into outdoor seasons, I remember getting ready to open up my steeple. And it was at Mount Sac Relays. And Andrew was like emailing the meet director to try to get me into the first heat, because I obviously should have been in the first heat, right? I was coming off of this great indoor season. I knew I was fit, but I only had my steeple PB from the year before.
Right. So they wanted to like use your 3K.
So Andrew was trying to make this argument that like, okay, this girl just ran 9:02. Like she's gonna run at least 10 flat, right? Please put her in the first heat, right? And they refused. They would not put me in the first heat. And so in that race, I won the whole meet from the B section, and ran 9:43 in the steeple. That was my first ever world standard. So that race qualified me for worlds from the B heat.
And did you have to run that alone pretty much?
I ran it all alone. Yeah, every step of the race alone, soloed the 9:43. And that was kind of that moment too. Again, like we knew I was going to run much faster than I had, but we didn't know it was going to be that. So to be able to get the world standard, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, like if we kind of hold on to this, we have a good Canadian champs, like we're going to worlds, which is absolutely nuts. Yeah.
Unreal. And like that just, I guess that shows how good of an athlete you are, that you did it, because like I find when you're running with people and like you could just latch onto someone, it's a very close skill. Like you're just like, you're working on fitness, but the variables aren't really there. And then when you have to do something solo like that, it becomes an open skill. Yeah. Like now you have to take more cues from your own body. You have to be a little more conscientious of like the splits and you're dealing with, right? And so I guess like, the stars align there. It's like, not only are you fit as a fiddle, right? But you're in that mindset now where like you want this, you know how to do it, right? So I think that I can assume that when you started in North Dakota, like the Olympics wasn't on your radar. Like not like it's not like a pipe dream. Like, oh, that's cool. Like I wish.
Wasn't
like,
even really not on my radar.
Like, oh, I'm gonna run this like track stuff in college and get a degree and then it'll be fun. But that was the time when it shifted. Like oh, I can get to a lot of things, right? Yeah.
All of a sudden, because you qualify for the World Championships. That's essentially the same as qualifying for the Olympics on a non-Olympic year. Yeah,
that's 2015.
Yeah, right? That was 2015. Yeah. And so then just a major shift to like, okay, we weren't even like qualifying for NCAA champs, and now all of a sudden we got Olympics on our radar, right? Yeah.
And like, so from the time, what was the timeline between, I just squeezed into like the Western Conference to now I qualified for World Championships?
Less than a year. Yeah.
That is insane.
Yeah.
And like, I guess like, so like you said that your training ramped up. Was that volume? Like more or less?
Yeah, essentially. Like I would say I kind of went from more training like middle distance to training like a distance runner, right? So volume and just different training. I think Andrew had like a little bit of a different style than what I was doing before. And, I think there's lots of different ways for training, and I don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong way to an extent, but it clicked really well for me. And I was lucky, you know, sometimes even so, it takes some time for new training to click. And it seemed to be just like, it clicked really fast.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, okay, this is working.
When I switched to Claude's program, it took me like a year.
Which is normal.
Just to like deal with like, oh my God, we have to do this much volume. Like this is wild. But then afterwards, like in my own scale, like I excelled like really well, right? Like I like in U sports, it's like qualifying for the 4x8 team,
right.
or you know, being like those like achievements, those milestones. Or I give credit to a lot of my running success is in high school, because in high school, I was maybe like not the greatest runner. Like I was undertrained for sure. Like that's what I felt like. But I developed like good form, good running mechanics, and speed. Like I could run a 50-second 400 or close to it. And then when I felt like when I made the jump to higher volume, I felt like I had a baseline of ability in terms of speed and just running like ergonomics or running economy that a lot of my contemporaries didn't have, because they were much faster than me, especially in the longer distances in high school, but they sort of either plateaued or had like some sort of injury that happened later on. Whereas I think, you know, having that foundation of the speed and the strength work that I did in high school, even though I may have not been the fastest I could have been at that time, really paid dividends when I was in university. Do you feel sort of the same way?
Totally, 100%. And you know what? There's no way of knowing. It's like, okay, would it be different if I did it a different way? I don't know. Yeah. Right. Like I would agree that I think I developed like really good form. I worked on my speed a lot through high school, and I think that really paid off. And yeah, I don't wish I ran more in high school. Absolutely. First of all, like I mentioned, I don't think I would have liked the sport that much.
Right. Yeah. Because you have to have that, build that retention, right?
Yeah, totally. And attention is not my strong suit. It's something I've worked on, but I wouldn't have liked that when I was in high school. I like doing the fast stuff and the speed and everything like that. But I do think it made me really strong. And I think partially because of my multi-sport background, but I've been incredibly lucky with injuries through my career. And I do feel like, you know, maybe that is part of the reason I was able to kind of add volume later on and really benefit from it. Again, who knows, right? But I do think I would say like I developed really well throughout high school and my early university years. So I don't wish I jumped to more sooner. I think it was the right timing for me. Yeah.
And I like another like thing that I've heard, and I don't know if Scott said it or I just thought of it. Like it's half the time I don't even know what my thoughts are, if they're original or not, or I just heard someone else say it.
I jabbed that off someone else.
Yeah. But I like when I was 15 or 16, I had a totally different body than I do now. Right. 100%. Like you're going through like that stages of puberty where it's like, do you want to cap out your strength when you're not even fully developed yet? Yes. Like wait until you're at your like final form and then work on that. Right. Like
100%.
Because like your nervous system, you can focus on developing movement patterns and all that stuff. And that stays with you. Right. But if you're trying to like max out your 75% potential at that time, right? Is that like a good use of your time? Maybe like just focus on the stuff that you will transfer when you're, you know, like an adult, like a real adult, right?
Yeah. And I would definitely, especially like pre-puberty, like really, really hesitate to have someone be putting too much into their sport. Yeah. It's, you know, from a physical standpoint, like you kind of discussed, but even psychological, right? Because I think sometimes, you know, especially for young girls, you see young girls who have delayed puberty because they're training so hard at such a young age. And then either they don't really go through puberty fully, and they wind up with, you know, having
weaker than they could have been,
bone problems for their whole life, right? Like really delayed development. And that's not good. or they do go through puberty and then all of a sudden, because going through puberty is kind of hard. Like it's just like,
I've been there. Yeah.
totally. We've been there, right? And I think for like young girls too, like your body changes through puberty,
Yeah.
right? And sometimes that leads to decrease in performance for a period of time. And
yeah.
you got to ride that out.
Yeah,
And
you
I
got
think male
deal
and
with the
female,
hips
but
and everything like that.
totally, yeah. Like I think it's like, you kind of have to ride that out, and then you can, if you do it right, you can come out of it. But I think sometimes we see like young girls who are training so hard and identifying with their sport, and then they go through puberty and they're struggling, and then all of a sudden this thing that was their whole identity at such a young age is now not going well, and it's psychologically really, really difficult for them, right? And so I think, again, like going back to like, hey, at a young age, let's focus on the movement patterns. Let's focus on having fun.
Yeah.
Let's focus on doing different sports and sampling different things, and then figuring it out. Because sometimes you don't even know what your body is made for until after puberty.
Right. No, exactly. Like, and I think we've both seen it, like girls like 13 or 14, like they're like superstars. Right. And then they they just develop into like not a runner body. Like it just, it's,
you don't know.
right. Yeah. And then, like you said, they have so much chips on being a runner.
It's tough.
Like, and like the whole identity thing, like, is it's maddening for myself and like probably you. Like it's a thing that I had to like diversify my identity, and it's usually with this tech stuff, right? Like, and
Totally.
I was talking to like Mr.Drover the other day about it, and he's like, it's hard to put all your identity in one basket, and then as soon as something happens, you're like, who am I? Like my whole self-worth was put into this, right? So
100%. And, that's something that really came into play for me, even as we said, like I had this breakthrough, and I did, like, I became quite obsessive about running, really.
Well,
like,
at that level, like that's your job pretty much.
Totally.
Right?
And it did become my job. And I did not have a robust identity at that time in my life. Like I was so solely focused on running. And that is what happened to me, where it's like, then I went pro, it became my job and my livelihood and everything like that. And when it wasn't going well, it got really, really tough. Right. And so I think that's the tough part. It's like having a singular identity and, really focusing on one thing is great when it's going well, and it's really, really tough when it's not going well. And of course, if you want to be good at anything, you have to, make sacrifices and put a lot
there's
into
not
it.
always that balance, right? Like you have to like weigh the scale like heavy on one side when you want to do stuff. Of course,
right? But I do think it's like knowing that you're a person outside of your sport.
Yeah.
And, research actually shows like athletes that have a plan for themselves and have that do better in their sport too, performance wise. So like it really is a win-win, right? And again, it's not totally balanced, but like you can know that, enjoy things outside of your sport as well.
Yeah.
That doesn't make you a bad athlete. And I got very stuck in that trap, and it was very, very difficult for me then, through my professional career, when I all of a sudden wasn't hitting all the goals I wanted to.
Yeah, like Jessica O'Connell said a very similar thing. And she was saying when she like transitioned into coaching and sort of like retired from, competitive running, that she was kind of lost, right? And not only that, like, oh, like that's my identity, I really don't know what to do next. But she also said that like the sacrifice running, and it's a calculated sacrifice, but like all the time you're running, you're not doing other things, right? So you haven't developed like rock climbing or like whatever you like, right? Like
hobbies,
like you see
those,
like
right?
your friends or your peers are doing other things, and there's so many compounding days where it's like, oh, I got practice, like I got practice, right?
Yep.
So that's something like I guess we all have to balance. And now as we're all getting older, like we always have to think about that. But back to world championships, because that's sort of a big thing that we sort of mentioned, and then we like went off.
We've been all over the place, like, in a good way.
Like how, like again, like I've never been on that big of a stage. Like walk us through that experience of like, once you got the call saying you could go, like, and then at the venue, like how was that? Like that's an experience that most people will never experience in their life.
It's so cool, right? After the steeplechase and world standard, and I went through and, you know, ran NCAAs and everything. And then, when I was selected to the world championship team and I competed in Pan Am games that year as well, when it was in Toronto in 2015, you know, just being able to go to these places and you're surrounded by all these amazing athletes. It's such a unique experience, to be able to travel the world. So before World Champs, we were in South Korea for our training camp for a couple weeks,
so
right?
awesome. Yeah.
And it's just so cool because you're in this environment, and, you know, that's all I wanted to do was train and race. And it's so cool because you get to do it. Now you have all this support all of a sudden, and, you know, you're around all these other amazing athletes. It's such a unique experience. And it's like one I really, really will always treasure to, you know, I'm lucky to be able to have had that. And then, World Champs that year was in Beijing. So cool. The Bird Nest Stadium, right? Like definitely one of the coolest stadiums I've ever competed at. And again, like you're traveling with this team, you're all here, you're all chasing similar goals. It's such a unique environment to be a part of. And it was awesome. It's just such a good experience. You know, my experience in Beijing, my first world championships, I ran a personal best in the heats and stuff and didn't make the final or anything like that. But, you know, it was so cool just to be at that stage and be able to run the best I ever have, like that. Right. So actually the only time I've ever experienced that. Yeah. So you don't realize it at the time how unique and cool those experiences are, or rare sometimes. But that was amazing for me. Loved every minute of that. I do think after that, I put a lot more pressure on myself to make, all of a sudden it's the Olympics, right?
Now you're a world-class athlete.
Totally.
Like on paper,
And now it's like, because going into the Worlds year, like I wasn't expected to make the world team. No one thought about me making the world team, but now I'm expected, right?
Yeah.
You know, I won Canadians this year. All of a sudden you're coming back as a defending champ, right? And it is much more pressure when you're like, okay, I should be making an Olympic team. I need to make an Olympic team this year. I would say my senior year wasn't quite as free and exciting as my my third year of university with that almost looming Olympic time. I wish I would have enjoyed it a little bit more, but
right. I don't know, like just the whole like scenario. And again, like I feel like I've experienced a lot of things you have, just at like a scale down, but that's crazy that you ran your best time in that situation, because the way I look at it, sometimes it's like a lot of my times and my performances come down to like routine and planning and like just prepping and just making sure I cross out every variable that I can, right? Like in terms of my life around me. So when you're traveling and you're with like new people, like sometimes new coaches, I found that I have a little bit of a hard time competing at my best when my routine has switched up so much. And it can act as like the opposite, where it's like, this is so new, this is such a new stimulus that like all of a sudden you have another gear that you never had before. Did you have any like fears that you were in a situation where like your schedule is a little off, and like how would that affect your competing? Like just traveling, your time changes, whatever.
Yeah, it can definitely be a factor, right? Like, and you know, you're lucky in this situation, you're lucky too, because you have this support team around you, right? So you have these physiologists and doctors and dietitians who are doing everything they can to help you adjust to this new environment the best you can. So you are a little bit more sheltered, right? You know, they're making sure if we're staying at a hotel that there's like good food and all of that we can eat. But I think what it comes down to is like, you know, be prepared as best you can, control the controllables, right? Like keep your routine as much as possible, even in this new environment where there's like new shiny things, you know, like Olympic Village, right?
Right. Yeah.
All of a sudden like, whoop. Like the shiny things.
This is why I got here.
Yeah, it's the same. Yeah. It's the same routine, right? Like, okay, I go to bed. You know, you have to adjust to the time, whatever it might be. Then it's like you just get as much on your routine as possible. You know, pre-race, I'm like, okay, I got my little oatmeal packets, I got my coffee. You know, all of that. So you control the controllables and know that like the uncontrollables, you know, accept and let go, right? Like you can't do anything about those. And yeah, sometimes it is like it's a new environment. Like can get excited about that. Like maybe that gives you a little extra adrenaline, whatever it might be. But yeah, it can be difficult sometimes when you're traveling a ton and managing all that and managing fatigue. So it is a skill, and it is something that, you know, if you're on Team Canada, you're lucky enough to have a really good support team to help you manage those things as well, which is helpful.
So like it was like new experience all around, but when you got on the track and you raced, did you find it like, oh, I'm at world championships, like this is crazy? Or like once you got on the track, you lined up, you're like, okay, this is a 3K steeple race.
The gun goes off and it's a race, right? At the end of the day, like you're not thinking too much.
Like
some people are more aware. For me, I'm pretty much like, I'm on the track, right? And it's definitely a vibe. Like, I think, you know, maybe you're a little bit more nervous going into it. Like, that's fine. Nothing wrong with that, right? You know, you walk up out into the stadium and there's all these people. So like, yeah, you have that moment of like, whew, okay, right?
This is it.
Yeah, you're a little more anxious. That's okay. Nothing wrong with that.
Excitement.
Right, exactly. And then the gun goes off and you're racing, right? And so at the end of the day, it's 400-meter track, no matter where you are. You know, competition might vary, but at this point, like you've raced so many times that it's pretty easy to just lock in once you start racing.
Your strategy doesn't really change that much from another high competitive like NCAA meet, right?
Yeah,
It's just
truly, yeah, it's really not that much different. So yeah, when you're racing, you're not really thinking about it.
nice.
Yeah.
And then I guess the next year was the Olympic trials. That was in Edmonton, right?
Yeah.
'Cause I competed in that, and I remember watching your race. And it was unbelievable that I still have this in my mind. But I was watching I don't even think I was there, like physically watching it. I think my race was like at a different time, so I was in the hotel watching it, and I remember you qualifying, getting it. Like, did you get first or second in that?
I won, yeah.
You won, okay.
Yeah.
Because I remember you hitting the finish line, and then I guess it replayed in like slow motion, something like that.
Yeah.
And you were like, just were like, yes, like, and I was like, holy shit, she's going to the Olympics. Like that's like burned into my mind. I was like, that's Erin Teschuk, guys. Like, I guess like we didn't like get the grasp of like world championships. Like we were like, wow, that's insane.
Yeah.
But then we're like, holy shit, like it's an Olympian, guys. Like, and like we were all rooting for you, and that was such an amazing experience. So I guess maybe it was a little like a little more normalized because you already made the world championships, right?
Yeah.
But how did it feel when you raced those Olympic trials? You won. You realized you were going.
Yeah.
How did that feel?
It honestly, like, I remember it and I can think of the picture of me crossing, like, it was almost like relief. Like, it was like, it's a lot of emotions, right? But going into it, yeah, like my third year of university, that world champs year, it really was a fairy tale. Like, everything was going well. My fourth year, I actually I don't think I ran any personal bests that year. I was like, and I was tired. Honestly, like, it's tough managing.
It was a long season.
The collegiate, like, because we're going cross country, indoor, outdoor, then trials and Olympics, right? Like it's a full year without any breaks, really, and that was kind of new territory for me as well, being at this level, and going into the Olympic trials, I didn't even know, like, because my standard was from world champs that I ran, which was in the window, but Canada was doing this thing this year where they wanted you to prove fitness. It was a very bizarre strategy because you had to prove fitness, but I was sat down at the beginning of the Olympic year, and the Athletics Canada head coach was like, well, what do you feel like you need to do to prove fitness? And I'm like, what? Like, like I get to choose, right? Like, and you're like, are you asking, like, I'm like, my goal is to run like 9:30. He's like, so you want your proof of fitness to be 9:30? I'm like,
whoa.
No, like, I ran the standard, excuse me. Like, so it was, honestly,
shouldn't
it was
the standard be like,
that's the point of the standard, right? Like, and so I think, it was very murky. And so going into this year, I was kind of like, I mean, I had some solid races. NCAA's was a tough race for me. I fell on the last barrier. Devastating. But I had some solid races. And so I'm going into this trials. And I remember, like, my coach just, like, on the phone with the Athletics Canada head coach, like, trying to figure out what I had to do to make the Olympic team. And he's like, well, I don't know. Like, it was
No one's giving you an answer. Like,
no one was giving us an answer. And I remember having a conversation with my coach, and I'm just like, I got to win, right? Like, I don't know if I would have been selected if I was second or third, because maybe I would have.
Yeah,
but I could also see
on how other events are going, I guess.
Yeah,
right?
and it probably depends. Like, maybe if I was third place, but a little bit off them and didn't run a great time, they wouldn't have selected me. I don't know. But I was like, okay, well, if I win, they got to select me, right? Yeah. Like, there's no way I'm not. So I really went into that race being like, okay, we have to make a statement. I got to win this. And so truly, like, crossing that line was like just a relief. It was like 50 pounds off my shoulders.
Wow.
But like, yeah, very, very emotional for sure.
Well, I want you to know, man, like, there are so many people cheering for you and like proud of you, and like
that's nice.
Tear-jerking moments for people that you probably didn't even realize, man. Like, we're all pumped for you, and
that's cool.
That was awesome. Were you more nervous for the Olympic trials or the Olympic race?
Oh, that's tough
I feel
to
like
say. Probably the same, honestly. It's just like, like definitely some stress going into both of those. And like I said, like I was a little overtired at that time of year. And I think that kind of lent into it as well. When you're like, I think in general, if you're like kind of overworked and, overtired, it's just harder to manage emotions. And so I felt like there was a lot of stress going into both of those events. So probably pretty similar.
Your goal changes though, because when Olympic trials, you're like, I gotta win. Like, that is so what was your goal going into the Olympics? Just PB, run like as fast as you can, like place, get through.
I mean, I think the goal is always like to qualify for the finals, but like I knew it was going to be a tough one for me to do. So I was really just focused on I just wanted to have a good race, right? Like, whether it was a PB or close to a PB, it's just like you want to go onto that stage and feel like you are walking away with a race you're proud of, right? Like, to be competitive, be in the mix, even if it's not necessarily onto the finals. So that was kind of what the goal was.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into part 1 of my conversation with Erin Teschuk. She really is the quintessential athlete. Tune in next time where I get all my questions answered about what it's like to be a pro athlete. She breaks down working with multiple shoe companies, what her perks are, how training changes from being an NCAA athlete to a pro athlete. She also talks about some struggles she had and how she moved back to Canada to reinvigorate her running career. And she breaks down all the success that she's experiencing now. Tune in next time to get all the details.